Hey guys, this video is going to go over writing expressions. So you should have out your note sheet and make sure you are filling in your note sheet completely as I go through this video. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a variable. A variable is a letter or symbol used to represent a quantity that is unknown or can change. You guys used variables last year when you were writing expressions. So an example is, let's say we're talking about the number of movies you own. Okay, right now maybe you have 10 movies, but that's something that can change. So let's say you don't want to actually put the number, you want to give it like a symbol to represent the number of movies you own. You could actually call it anything you want. I could say the number of movies I own is X, or I could call it M, okay? And then let's say that's the number of movies you own, and then I say, well, I always am going to have 2 more than you. So I could write, here's how many you own plus 2. So that X there, that's something that is always going to be, it's unknown or it can change. Okay, same thing for your age up here. I could use a variable to represent your age because, again, that's something that maybe I don't know or it can change. I could use an X again to represent your age, or you could use an A. It's just a letter or symbol used to represent something that you don't know. All right, so our next definition is an expression. An expression is a number sentence that does not have an equal sign. So an expression is sort of like a math sentence that you write without an equal sign. So let's say I have something like this, 4 plus 5. That's an expression. Or I could use a variable. I could say 4n plus 3. That's also an expression. Or I could say my weight, whatever that is, I'll call it W, plus 3 more pounds. That's an expression. Okay, notice there are no equal signs. An equation is a number sentence that uses an equal sign. Okay, so an equation has an equal sign. Kind of think about it. Equation has the word equal almost right in it. All right, so an equation uses an equal sign to say that 2 expressions are equal. So let's say I have 4n plus 3. There's one expression. And I'm going to say that's equal to n plus 1. That's an equation because it has 2 expressions, one on each side, and it's saying that they're equal. Another one could just be like this, 4 equals 4. That's an equation, okay, because it has an equal sign, it has an expression on both sides. Or I could say x plus 1 equals 5. Again, that is an equation because it has an equal sign. All right, so we're going to go over some operation keywords. When you see these keywords, they usually tell you what symbol to write down when you're trying to write a number sentence. So the very first one we're going to look at is equals. When you see one of these keywords, it will usually tell you that you're going to write down the equal symbol for your word sentence or your number sentence. All right, so a couple of the keywords are is, equal to, and the same as. For addition, these words will tell you that you're going to use a plus symbol. All right, and these words are plus, sum, in all, total, and more than. Okay, subtraction, some keywords for subtraction are less than, difference, fewer than, and minus. So when you see those words, oftentimes you'll be subtracting. Multiplication, there's a couple of key ones in this one. The first one is per. Okay, when you see that, usually it means times. Same thing with each. Okay, product means the answer to a multiplication problem, and then twice. This is one that comes up quite a bit. Twice actually means you're doubling something, so you're timesing it by 2. Okay, of also means multiply, times, double, triple. Doubling means timesing by 2. Tripling means timesing by 3. Okay, and then division. So when you see these words, you're going to divide. Quotient, which is the answer to a division problem, divided by, half of, evenly, and split. Those keywords are going to tell you to divide. All right, so please make sure you pause this video and add these keywords to your note sheet. All right, so here's what we're going to be learning how to do. Today we're going to try to write phrases for each expression. So I have a sentence I'm going to give you, and we're going to try to write an expression. Now remember, an expression does not have an equal sign. So let's take a look at the first one. It says the total of 5 and a number k. What I usually like to do is go through the sentence and underline any key words that I just saw from my chart. So look at your notes. I see total is a key word that actually means add. All right, so let's see what it says. It says we're going to take the total of 5 and a number k. So here's 2 things I'm working with, 5 and a number k. Okay, so I don't know the number, but they called it k. Okay, so to write an expression, I'm just going to add, it says the total of 5, so I'm going to do 5 plus that number k. I just wrote an expression for that number sentence. All right, let's take a look at this one. It says 25 less than a number x. All right, so first thing I'm going to underline my keywords. I see less than, okay, which means subtract, if you look at your chart. So it says I'm taking 25 less than whatever x is. So let's think about this. If I said you had 5 less than 10, you would write 10 minus 5, right? If you have 5 less than 10. So if I have 25 less than x, you always start with that x, because that's the number you start with, and then you have 25 less than that, so you subtract 25. So whatever you're doing less of, that should come second. Okay, so here is my expression. I just wrote an expression, x minus 25. So I don't know what my number is, so that's why I could call it x, and then 25 less than that, minus 25. All right, let's try this one. Okay, it says the quotient of m and 10. So first thing, I see a key word, which is quotient. Okay, I know quotient means to divide. All right, so that's my first step I do. So it says the quotient of m and 10. Those are the two numbers I'm working with. All right, so I know quotient means divide, so I can put a dividing line, and I have two numbers that I'm dividing, m and 10. Whatever they list first for dividing, that's what you put on the top. So I'm dividing m divided by 10. Another way to write that is m divided by 10 with the division symbol. All right, so quotient again means divide. All right, those last ones that we wrote were just pretty simple expressions to write. Now we're going to work on multi-step expressions. So please go on your note sheet, and here's the steps for solving or writing multi-step expressions. Step 1, you need to underline any key word, the key operation words, okay, and write the symbols above them. So if I saw the word total, I'd put like a plus symbol above it, or if I saw per, I'd put times. So first thing, you should always go through and underline. All right, second thing, it says circle the phrase that goes with that operation. So I'm going to be circling a phrase that goes with it. I'll show you what that means in a second. And step 3, you're actually going to write the expression, and this is super, super important. If you want to highlight this, you must follow the order of operations when you're doing this. So multiplying and dividing always comes before adding and subtracting. Leave adding and subtracting until the end. All right, let's try one now that you have those steps written down. It says 4 less than 8 times the number n. So the very first thing you're going to do is go through this, find any key words that you see. All right, so one that I know is less than. That's on my chart. Less than means subtract. So I underlined it, I put a subtraction symbol. Another key word is times. Times means multiply. So I'm just going to underline that, and I'm going to put a dot for multiply. Okay, my next step is I'm going to come through and now kind of circle the things that go with what I just underlined. So it says 4 less than, so that kind of goes together. 4 less than 8 times the number n. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to start with, you have to follow the order of operations. So think, would you subtract first or would you multiply first? Well, you know you multiply first, so I'm going to start with this. 8 times the number n. So if I want to write 8 times this number n, I'm just going to write 8 times n. I'm not going to use a dot. Okay, you could put 8 times n, but a better way to write that is 8n. When a number is right next to a variable, that means times, and hopefully you learned that last year. Okay, then it says 4 less than that, so now I can subtract 4. Okay, all right, let's try another one. So let's go through and underline the key words. The first one I see is the word quotient. That's on my chart, and I know quotient means divide. I'm going to put that above there. So it says the quotient of 8 times, I know times means multiply. I'll put that. 8 times a number m and 2. Okay, so now we need to circle stuff. So it says the quotient of 8 times a number m, okay, and 2. Okay, because quotient means I'm dividing two things, so I need to actually have kind of two things circled. So here's what I would do in this one. Quotient means divide. I'm going to put my dividing line. I need two things, one on top, one on bottom. So whatever comes first, that's the first thing in the quotient. So the quotient of 8 times the number n. Well, I can write that as 8n. That means 8 times n. And the other number is 2. Okay, so I can write that out as 8n divided by 2. Or you could write 8n divided by 2. All right, I'd like you to put a little star next to your name on the front of the worksheet, please. Okay, let's try one more. All right, so it says 5 less than the product of 3 and C. All right, I see less than. That's a key word. I'm going to put subtract. The product, I know product means multiply. I'm going to put times there. Okay, now I'm going to go through and kind of circle what goes with it. So it says 5 less than. Okay, that's all kind of one part of the sentence. The product of 3 and C, that kind of all goes together. So I have two things. Now I have to decide, what do I start with? So think, order of operations. Do you subtract first or times first? I know I'm going to multiply first. So product means you multiply. You're multiplying 3 and C. So I'm going to write 3 times C, which I can write just like that, 3C. And then it says 5 less than that. So I'm going to subtract 5 less than that. So my expression is 3C minus 5. All right, now that you're done taking notes on your note sheet, I want you to go back and finish any of the problems on the sheet that are not done. So your entire note sheet should be filled in and ready to go to show your teacher tomorrow in class.